Turn in your Bible to the 49th Psalm, as you can see on the screen up here. And several things I could call this, but I decided that my titles for this would be Psalm of the Preacher. Now, I'll explain this, and I think you'll appreciate why I've done this. I took this picture and put it up. This is a picture out of this Bible right here. This is my own Bible, wide margin, King James Version. And you say, I got notes all in it. I've got notes all in this Bible. I just fill it up, and I use pencil. Somehow I felt safer using pencil, making my notes than ink. Now, you can buy these Bibles, and they got all kind of color highlighters and things for different themes and all, and that will be fine if that's what you want to do. Or some people think, oh, I don't want to put a mark in my Bible, and that'd be all right. But you might want to just get a Bible that you feel free to write in and use it almost like a study journal. My favorite study Bible now is my own Bible. I've got so many notes in my own Bible that if I want to study, I can just turn to this and start looking up what it is that I've made notes on. And so my Bible is filled with these little notes, usually in pen. I got wide margin because I wanted to take so many notes on that. But this is the book of Ecclesiastes. And look at the subtitle. The Preacher. That's what the word Ecclesiastes means. It means the preacher. It's interesting. It's a Greek name for this book. Now, Solomon writes this in Hebrew. But about 300 years before Christ, in that period between the Testaments, the Jews in Alexandria, Egypt, took the Hebrew and translated it into Greek. And a lot of the names we have of the books in our Bible actually come from that Greek Septuagint version. There were 70 of them, so that's why they called it that, the Septuagint, for the 70 that translated it. And that's what this is for, Ecclesiastes. You might hear another word if you listen. Ecclesiastes. Here's a word some of you will be familiar with. It's a Greek word. Ecclesia. Have you heard that word? Let me remind you. Ecclesia is the word usually translated church. And the meaning of the word is assembly. It's a called out assembly. Ecclesia. Ecclesio, that's to call. And called out. A called out assembly. It comes from the idea in the old Greek city-states. When there was a crisis the city was facing, they'd send out the call. And the men of the city would assemble to see, what are we going to do to deal with this crisis? A lot of times it was a war crisis, calling out to say, how are we going to defend ourselves against this enemy? That word Jesus used to describe the people he would call out of this world, and those constitute his church, ecclesia. Okay, let's go back to this word Ecclesiastes. The word means it's the one that makes the call to gather an assembly that he might address them with a message. I think it says there in the margin of that Bible, one who assembles others for a message. I wrote that right out beside that word. Ecclesiastes. That's the preacher. And look at the first verse. The words of the preacher. That's the ecclesiastic right there. The words of the preacher. That's why that word has the Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is like a sermon that Solomon is going to preach. And he's going to preach it to young people. He's old Solomon, the old king. It's like you've had him here. Let's have a youth meeting. We have Hay coming up. All the youth are going to be. Let's get Solomon. Well, let him talk on anything he wants to. And Solomon comes and talks to all these young people about the real meaning of life. What is it all about? And if you're just looking at things under the sun, this earthly, worldly things, if that's what your life is based on, things under the sun, then you're just living no better than a beast. That's pretty much what he said. It's vanity of vanities. Fear God and keep his commandments is what the old preacher said. The old preacher king said. This is the whole duty of man. So that's pretty much what we're going to get in the 49th Psalm. It's the same lesson, and a lot of times it uses some of the same language to teach that, only in just a few verses, in 20 verses here. And the detail of it is all spelled out here in the book of Ecclesiastes. So that's why I called the 49th Psalm the Psalm of the Preacher, because of Ecclesiastes. Now, here's what we'll read in Ecclesiastes. You get into Ecclesiastes, and some things, if you take it out of context, you think, what is Solomon saying here? It says, that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them all. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all his vanity. Solomon said, we're just animals. Is that all it is? We're just beasts. And when we die, we're going to die just like the dogs. Well, remember now the context. He's talking about things under the sun. And that's the worldly, earthly things. If you think of things beyond the sun as the spiritual things, the whole picture changes. But if all you can look at are earthly, material, worldly, fleshly things under the sun, then you just soon be like a beast. You're going to die like a beast. He's not saying man doesn't have an eternal spirit. You got to put it into the context of what he's saying. If all there is what's under the sun, then man dies like a beast. Now notice the 47th Psalm. The key to 49th Psalm. The key to the 49th Psalm. It's in the last verse. Sounds like the preacher, doesn't it? Man that it is honor is in honor, and understandeth not, is like the beasts that perish. The honor here is talking about the honor that men give men. Men give honor to men. And what do men usually honor men for? Well, worldly men honor other worldly men for worldly things, don't they? I mean, you can have the honor of men if that's all you have. And you don't understand. You're not thinking beyond this life. You're thinking only material, and you're not thinking spiritual. And you're like a beast that perishes. That's all your life amounts to. You had your worldly honors, kind of like the Pharisees. They have their reward. It's not that eternal reward that is far greater. So you see how this 49th Psalm kind of sounds like the book of Ecclesiastes, doesn't it? Let's go into it. It's for the chief musician, a psalm for the sons of Korah. We've had a series of these psalms for the sons of Korah, and this is going to be the last of those together. There's a couple of others further on down the way that we'll get to eventually. But right now, we'll leave those sons of Korah with this psalm right here. And then he sounds like a preacher. Look what he does. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world. Boy, that doesn't sound like a preacher calling an assembly together to address a message. And it's not just a message for the Jews only. All the people, all the nations of the world. This is a message for everyone that we all need to hear. It doesn't matter who you are in the world, and it doesn't matter your status in the world. Look at verse 2. Both high and low and rich and poor together. That means you. You're either high or low or rich or poor, and you're one of the inhabitants of this world. Let's listen to the voice of the preacher here. What's he going to talk to us about in this psalm? He said, my mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline my ear to a parable, and I will open my dark sayings upon the harp. Now, it is a song. I suppose they could have just accompanied the harp with it. But sometimes musical instruments were used in the Old Testament not so much to kind of play along as you sing, like we would a guitar or something, but it's almost like we use a buzzer or a gong or a bell to call the attention. Strike the strings of the harp. And now that I've got your attention, you've heard that sound, let me preach to you. And I'm going to preach some of those dark sayings. I'm going to let you know what everyone wonders about. Why are we here? What is life for? What about life is even worth living? There's a lot of pain and agony in living. Is it worthwhile to go through life? That's what the preacher's going to be preaching on. And look how he begins. Again, going to remind us of Ecclesiastes. He's going to say, wherefore should I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? The evil days. If you turn to the Song of Solomon, chapter 12, he's going to talk to the young people. He says to seek God in the days of our youth before the evil days come. The evil days. What are the evil days? We go on the next chapter, he describes them. It's the infirmities of old age. Like the person said, you got to be tough to get old. And the aches and pains, and you lose control of your limbs. You can't hear. The sight becomes dull. The teeth, you're losing your teeth. The grinders cease because they're few. And I thought I'd just read it this morning, but I don't think I'm going to take time to do it. Read that last chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes, and he describes the infirmities of age. That's the evil days. And it talks about the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about. You see, you can outrun this, but you can only run so long. Now, I've already started running. When I was a young person, I didn't think about it. Man, I thought, listen, when I was a young person, I remember when I thought you're in your 30s, you're getting old. I remember that. And then I kept moving it back to the 50s, now here I am. I'm looking up at 70. And that don't seem as old as I thought, but I tell you, I can see it coming. I can see it. I can already feel it. And so I'm trying to watch what I eat. I'm trying to exercise more. I'm looking after my health. The evil days are coming. I've seen them come on others. I'm watching my parents in the midst of them. So I'm trying to run away from that, but you can't run. You can't run forever. You can outrun it a little while, but it's going to catch up with you. It's right on your heels. And that's what this is talking about. Those days come. So why should I fear? When the evil days come, when the infirmities of age come, and I look ahead and I know my days are few, but why should I fear? What's there to be afraid of? Here's the ones that fear. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother or give to God a ransom for him. Skip the parentheses, that he should still live forever and not see corruption. You're not going to buy your way out of this. Now, if you have a lot of money, you might be able to afford good food and get a gym membership and go to afford good doctors and get good medicine, but it's only going to help a little bit. It's not going to help a lot. It's going to come up on you, and you can't redeem your own soul with money. He's going to say the redemption of their soul is precious, but it ceaseth forever. It's precious. You can't buy more days, not many more. It says, 1 Peter 1, 18 and 19, we're not redeemed with corruptible things, like silver and gold from the vain conversation received from your fathers, for the precious blood of Christ is a lamb without spot, without blemish. You can't say, well, I'm rich, I'll buy my salvation. You won't do that. You don't have enough. It takes the blood of Christ. Notice the precious blood of Christ. Precious. Go back where we were. Precious blood of Christ. Their soul is precious. It takes precious blood to redeem a precious soul. And then what does he see? Well, wise men die. I've seen people, I know doctors come into their old age and they die. They have bad health. Doctors do. They're wise, aren't they? They're wise in particular, the thing we're talking about, but they die. Likewise, the fool and the brutish person perish and leave their wealth to others. It doesn't matter whether you're wise or you're a fool or how much you accumulate. What are you going to do with all that treasure that you've accumulated and laid by and store on this earth? You're going to leave it at somebody else. Again, this sounds so much like Ecclesiastes, doesn't it? Ecclesiastes 2, 16 through 19. How dieth the wise man? As a fool. Therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought in me under the sun is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yeah, I hated all my labor which I'd taken under the sun, because I could leave it unto the men that shall be after me. And who knoweth where he be a wise man or a fool? You're not going to take it with you, are you? And so Psalm 49 in verse 11, their inward thought is that their house shall continue forever, and their dwelling place to all generations. They call their land after their own names. I'm going to call this the, let me pick on Bolden, the Bolden Farm. Okay, you call it Mount View though, don't you? But you got Bolden Road. You know, someday somebody might just change that name. They forget all about who Boldens were. I'm going to name it after me. The people will remember me forever because I'll name this land after me. And then somebody else comes along, buys it, names it after themselves, and they don't remember that. Their thinking is this will go on forever, but it doesn't. It's worldly. It's earthly. It's material. It's not spiritual. That's not going to last. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He's like the beasts that perish. We're about halfway through the psalm now. This is the honor that men bestow upon men. And you may have all the honor that men can grant unto you. It's not going to help you. You're going to die. And if that's all it is, you're just like a beast that perishes, aren't you? So, he describes it. Verse 13 kind of explains it. This their way is folly, yet their posterity approveth their sayings. I mean, the men are approving them, but it's not getting you anywhere. It's folly. Like sheep, they're laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them. And the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. You don't want to leave the dead out where you can watch it and see it because it turns grotesque. Put it in the grave. Let their beauty disappear out of our sight. But then verse 15. This might sound like a dark psalm, but look at verse 15. It's like a little candle in the middle of the psalm giving forth the light. But God will redeem my soul from power of the grave. He shall receive me, Selah. See, this isn't like the beasts. Not if you've got God in your thoughts. Not if you're thinking spiritually things and you're spiritual minded. God will redeem me. Sounds like Job to me. You go to Job 19, 25 through 27, and here's what Job said. I know my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. There's going to be a resurrection. And Job is looking forward to that resurrection, and he'll see God. And that's what the psalmist here, the preacher, the 49th psalm is saying. God will redeem me from the grave. There's going to be a resurrection. Verse 16. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. By afraid here, don't think that means frightened about that, but don't be dismayed by that. Don't be overawed by that. Don't be impressed with that. Somebody's made rich. Well, that's good. They're rich as far as that goes. But there's better things than being rich. He says when he die, he'll carry nothing away. His glory won't descend after him. He's not going to take those riches with him. Look where we read elsewhere. 1 Timothy 6 and verse 7. We brought nothing into this world. It's certain we can carry nothing out. Here's how Job put it. Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. You don't take it with you. Now put that picture of that pyramid. I thought that stands for what a lot of foolishness man has done. Those great pyramids from great antiquity. They dig down in there and find out that this is a tomb. And they were at one time filled with treasures of things they thought they would take with them from this into the other world. And they didn't get to take them. Those old graves, they were robbed, and other people ran off with them after they died, and they never took them with them anyway. They were long gone even before those graves were robbed. You don't take it with you. And so though while he lived, he blessed his soul. And men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. Don't we? We do. And I'm proud to see people do well to themselves. And from a material point of view, there's something to honor that and praise that. But he'll go to the generation of his fathers and they'll never see light. They don't take this with them. This is only temporary. And so we come back then to this last verse. Man that it is honor, that's in honor among men, that understands not. They don't understand the spiritual things. They're like beasts that perish. They just soon be a duck or a cow or a tiger. And they might be impressive to some while they live, but then they just die. And that's all there is to it for them. But see, when you understand, you know better than that. And you know there's an eternity to live for with greater things. Let me close with these verses that teach us those greater things. Matthew 6, 19 through 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. The way your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Luke 12, 15 through 21. He said unto them, this is Jesus, take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things he possesseth. And then he tells the story of the rich man that had many barns and many goods and said, I'll tear down my barns, I'll build greater, and I'll say to my soul, soul, eat, drink, and be merry. And he'll say, but this night shall thy soul will be required from thee. And he called him a fool. Why was he a fool? He thought he could satisfy his soul with material things, and he could not. And then we read at the end, so is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Romans 8, 5 through 6. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded, that's fleshly minded, worldly minded. Carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Colossians 3 and verse 2. Set your affections on things above and not on things on the earth. Go back and read Ecclesiastes. Under the sun, under the sun. That's things of the earth. Think about things above. Things over the sun, not under the sun. And then this one. Matthew 4, verse 4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. I'm resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delights, things that are higher, things that are nobler. These have allured my sight. We don't want to live like beasts. I mean, we might think we've really amounted to something, and we've got controlled, and we've got all the luxuries and pleasures of life, and we got things to show off, and we look pretty good, but that's just going to be for a while. because that all passes. And we go to the grave and leave all that. And then we face eternity. And what are all these things? I'll put your things on things above. If you're ready to leave this worldly thoughts, focus on those spiritual thoughts, and become a follower of Christ who has prepared that way for us, then respond to this invitation as we stand and sing.